One of the great things, and you have to remind yourself that this is a great thing, is that you're together so much that you really do have a lot of opportunity to have conflict. And we had a room in our house where we called the parlor. And if there was conflict between anybody, whether it was me and a kid or two kids, we would wait there until really we had a healthy resolution. And my grown kids have come back to me and said that time had taught them a lot about conflict resolution that they're using in their friendships and marriages now.
Welcome to Homeschool Talks, a podcast by HSLDA. This is a show about all things homeschooling, from practical tips to inspiring stories and everything in between. This episode of Homeschool Talks features a conversation originally hosted live on our Facebook page. So if you like what you hear, be sure to follow us there for more content like this. We're so glad you've joined us today, and we hope you enjoy the program.
Hi everyone, I'm just so excited to be talking about the Gifts of Homeschooling. This is our second one, just talking about helping kids become whole people. And the way that I interpret that is how to help kids fully become fully functioning adults, which is really what we want at the end of the homeschooling journey. So welcome. I am Sandra Kim. I'm the Media Relations Director for Homeschool Legal Defense Association, HSLDA. And joining me today is Heather Frommack. She's HSLDA Consultant and Outreach Coordinator and homeschool mom to 5 of her own kids, which is so awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today, Heather.
Oh, yeah, it's awesome to talk about grown-up kids. That's exciting to think.
It is. I know one day I'll have a grown-up kid too. I can't really fathom that, but I believe you.
Grown-up kids are awesome. So it's all worth it.
That's awesome. So I know you have a lot of insight and perspective to share about this. Whether you're just thinking about homeschooling or you just need an attagirl, mom, dad, grandma, caretaker, whoever you are and wherever you're participating in this homeschooling journey, you have got this. And Heather and a lot of others have spoken into me. And so I am here to speak into you today to say, you've got this, even though you may not feel like it, it is possible.
That's right.
My family just started homeschooling 2 years ago. I have a 14-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an 8-year-old. It has been a great journey, and I'm excited to share what little insight I have about our family's experience so far. Heather, though she looks very young, has graduates and people who are even married. I know, it's unbelievable. Mm-hmm. So Heather, as we get started, can you tell us just a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I'd be so happy to. I'm just so excited to be able to encourage homeschooling families because it is it's such a rich and satisfying joy to be on this side of it. I still have 2 at home, so we have 5 kids, 3 biologically and 2 adopted from Ethiopia. The 3 biological kids have made it all the way through high school, homeschooled onto college. I didn't homeschool them in college. Let me make sure that's clear. But we had that opportunity. And then we have our 16-year-old and our 13-year-old adopted kiddos here at home. And I'm just excited to talk about this because, to be honest, I was really scared of teenagers before I had them. And I really didn't know what that was going to be like. And I really believe that homeschooling was a big factor in having a wonderful time with my teens and now being able to have a great relationship with them as adults. So this is a fun topic.
That's so exciting. And I'm excited. I can already tell just from the short time that I've been on my homeschooling journey, I would say that I thought I knew my kids really, really, really well. And homeschooling will let you know your kids that much better. I would say macro versus micro. So I really know them on a much more intensely layered, how they're feeling, what they're thinking about. Maybe just the hours that we got back from them being in public school, that's 8 to 9 hours away from me. And now I see them really from the moment they wake up until the moment they go to bed. That's not to say we don't do things out of the house. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Right. People always think like homeschoolers are just in their house. It's really funny. I actually think homeschoolers might be out of the house and doing more things than people who are not homeschooling. But we can talk about that a little bit too. So I guess one aha moment that I do want to share on the front end of this is that every family is unique and each homeschool will be different according to your kids, your situation, your household. And to unwrap that a little bit more, for instance, in my homeschool, my husband offices, they close their offices. He still works, but he has a permanent home office situation. So our homeschool really is a 50-50 sort of thing where my husband does half of it and I do half of it. He doesn't like the planning, so I do the planning and then he does the administration. Um, I would say that he wins favorite teacher every year. I win non-favorite principal every year.
Trying, Sandra, keep trying. There's still time.
No, I don't want to say I've given up, but they always pick daddy. And they think anyway. So homeschooling can give time together to your family and help you raise fully formed adults, which is really our end goal, right?
Mm,
We are not actually raising children, we're raising the children to become adults to one time live outside of your home. Do your
yes.
grown children live outside of your home, Heather?
All all my grown children have their own homes. What do you think of that? That's pretty great.
I can't, it's my mind is I'm not even joking, my mind is blown. So
Well, and I was just talking to a homeschool mom today who her oldest son is moving on to college. And while we do love the idea of our kids being, as you say, fully formed, awesome adults, that transition is hard too. Is saying goodbye and moving into that next season of adulthood. So, you realize on one level you're working towards that. That's your goal, but at
right,
the same time, as you were mentioning earlier, we spend so much time building these relationships with these amazing human beings. It really is like having friends leave the house at the end of the day. So there's that too. There's that too.
well, there's less money in grocery bills, so there's that, right?
True. That's true.
I mean,
That's very
because
true.
my little guy is always hungry, and I'm like, I'm fairly sure you just ate. So
Well,
I'm
one of
like,
the things you said earlier, Sandra, that I just wanted to ping off of a little bit. We are here to talk about how we raise our kids towards some of the soft skills of being an adult, being a person, and how we have this opportunity to get to know our kids through being
yeah,
together with them. But the other really interesting and powerful thing is we get to know ourselves
oh
in
yeah,
ways that we would never have the opportunity to do. And that is great and difficult,
agree.
and really a part of this incredible opportunity to become whole people ourselves through this process. So I do love that it's both and.
I love that.
Mhm.
So, let's go right into it. Pink Love says awesome job. So I'm going to go ahead and direct that at you, Heather. Awesome job. Your
Oh,
kids
thank you.
support themselves. They're out of the house, which is a crazy thought to me.
Mhm.
But I'm in the thick of things where I'm driving them all around town. That would be homeschooling field trips, to lessons, music lessons, to sports. So I just wanted to go ahead and put out there homeschoolers are no different than other schoolers. We do all those same things and more.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
with opportunities. And I
so
think that's what we're gonna talk about today too, the unique opportunities we can have because we homeschool. So
Oh, absolutely. I can't wait to talk about that part. So, I mean, one thing I think is a really cool thing that my kids have picked up on some, various level and are honing in on are executive functioning skills.
mhm.
So let's go ahead and say what executive functioning skills are, because I didn't really have a good grasp of that. So, Heather, would you mind unpacking that a little?
Well, people, a phrase that's really popular right now is this whole idea of adulting. And
Mm,
that's the way I like to think of executive functioning skills. It's all those skills that allow you to successfully navigate being an adult. It's time management, it's self control, it's being able to focus, being able to make decisions related to how and what you're going to do with your time. And those kinds of skills are so important. We know this as adults. We try to tell our kids, no, you have to wait to have that cookie, because a part of waiting is an important part of going to be the rest of your life, right? So I think executive functioning skills are those skills that help you be successful as a student, as a citizen, and as a part of your adulting once you leave the house.
Okay, so do you think like that has to do? I mean, for me, when I think about it, sort of a little bit more narrowly focused is like being able to organize themselves.
Right.
So for like my 14-year-old, I would say at 12, she was unable to organize herself on her own. So
Mhm.
I would have to say, we need to work on this for an hour, and then I need you to build in some time to do like cleaning up your room or doing your chores. These were all things that were not part of her thought
Mm,
process of how to bring it
right.
all together because it seemed
Mhm.
like too much. So that we spent quite a bit of time of talking about how long it takes to get things done. So that
Mhm.
was probably year, when she was 12. So 12 to 13, kind of had to work with her. She had a planner, but I would have to help her fill in that planner and do things like that. I would say the next year she took that and just ran with it. So she
Mhm.
knew. I would say to her, okay, well, these things need to get done by Friday, but guess what? On Thursday, our whole family is leaving. And so I need you to somehow get your Thursday and Friday done before we leave. And,
Right.
don't forget you need to pack and do all those things as well.
Right.
And so she was able to front load her week, get her stuff done, and then still be able to, move with us. So I thought that was an incredible sort of, she kind of picked up from seeing my husband and I, do that sort of scheduling and planning, and then also having to experience it.
Yeah, for sure. And, a lot of people like to talk about executive functioning by using that term executive and
Mhm.
thinking of what is the executive's role in an organization. The executive's role is to oversee, is to plan, is to set
Right.
goals and make sure those are accomplished. And one of the great things about homeschooling is some of what you're alluding to is that if you leave the house every day, it is invisible to you what it takes to manage a home, what it takes to manage to get those meals, get it cleaned up, rooms, laundry. Those are a lot of things that a lot of kids at the end of the day don't have time to do and be a part of that whole family system. But in homeschooling, you do have that opportunity. So you can learn some life skills that you take on with you that you might not have the other opportunity to do as easily if you're at school.
That's totally true. And so I used to tell my kids, like, do you know how hard I work to earn this money to pay for your violin lesson?
The
And
quick answer is no. We have
like,
no idea at all.
no, they really had no idea because, like you
Mhm.
said, they left and then something else happened and they weren't sure what that was. But
Magic.
yes, magic.
Mhm.
But for the last couple years, they've been home, and so they see me, in front of the computer, and then they can hear me in meetings, or they hear me on
Mhm.
the phone, or they see me on my computer, typing or doing whatever, and so they can actually see what that means
Right,
when I say I
right.
am working, and then when I take a break or it's lunchtime or something like that, I'm like, "Do you see now? I have stopped working and I'm doing something else. This is a
Yes.
chore." So you guys can stop doing your thing and then go do your chores.
Well, and you're really modeling that whole, I don't know if you're doing it intentionally or not, but that whole process of narrating through the day is really a helpful learning
Is it
skill.
really?
Yes, it
Everybody
is.
else finds it annoying.
Well, maybe it might be annoying as well, but it's also a really wonderful way to help put language to life. And when you
Oh,
put language to life, it builds neural connections that help your kids then incorporate that into their own way of thinking. So whether you meant to or not, that self narration throughout the day is
oh, okay. Well,
or annoying or both.
self-narration. I didn't even know it was a thing, but I
Yes,
was like, I'm
it is.
usually kind of like, so do you see that I can switch from being the worker person to
Yeah.
now what my husband tends to want to be more helpful. He's like, they're little kids, like they can't get lunch for themselves, but I don't know why he thinks in that way because I'm like, they absolutely can. And
Mhm.
they can use maybe not the sharpest knife, but they can use like a regular knife to cut their sandwich or decide there's food in the fridge and
Mhm.
make some healthy decisions on their own that are not by me. And of course, Heather, I like to cook and do all those things, but sometimes I can't. So I need for them to be able to take food out and feed themselves
Right.
so that I don't
Feeding
have
yourself
to.
is an important skill for
It
sure.
is. It
Well,
is.
and I think you're bringing up that opportunity that I notice a lot of homeschoolers take on. It's a mentality that says, that there's just this can-do mentality at earlier ages. Like
Mhm.
you can have your own business, or you can do your own laundry, or you can make your own food. In fact, you can make food for the family. One of the things that I learned from another homeschooling family, which was great for us, was this whole idea of meal mates that you and I have talked about before.
Oh, I love that. It
Yeah,
has not worked
I
out for us yet, but
oh,
I'm
no, it's
aspirational.
okay.
Okay.
So I take no credit for it, but it did work out really well for us. And we just rotated meals, and each child would be responsible for making that meal and cleaning up that meal, breakfast and lunch. And then dinner, they would come alongside whatever parent was making dinner so they could learn more advanced cooking skills. And that worked out great for us. And one of the great things about having adult kids is that they can circle back with you and tell you the things that they really appreciated. It worked well. They can also tell you the things that didn't work well, and that's humbling. But one of the things that they really have appreciated is they all know how to cook. They all know how to clean after themselves. And now that they've been in college and through college, they come back and will say, "Gosh, Mom, I've had roommates who really have no idea." And so these are opportunities you have as a homeschool family to give these kind of skills, life skills, and practice with it that your kids can take with them.
I love that. And homeschooling is a gift. And in the gift of homeschooling, there are other soft skills that can be learned in the journey of homeschooling that will help them in their life in work, their life in college, their life beyond the home, their own home.
Yeah, for sure.
Helping kids become whole people.
Yes, yes, and whole relationships. That's something you and I love to talk about too. Is that opportunity to prepare our kids to be adults for sure, but also to walk alongside them in a way that allows you to have a friendship with them, to have a rich relationship with them when they move on to that next season of life.
Right, right. And so, that's something that I look forward to, that I see with my friends who are ahead of me in this homeschooling journey, where I see that they have really strong and deep relationships with their children. And I also see from a sibling side how deep the roots are of these kids getting together, you know, aside from the fact that they are just siblings and they see each other, with parents or whatever, they are making time to really spend time together. And then I'll see that they had a homeschool relationship and they have shared memories and they have, fun stories and maybe pain stories, but whatever they are, there's shared experiences that really keep them bonded for life. So I think that is really, really cool.
One of the shared experiences that you and I have talked about before is the whole topic of conflict
Mhm.
resolution
Oh
and how
yeah.
different families manage that. And I
Mhm.
think one of the great things, and you have to remind yourself that this is a great thing, is that you're together so much that you really do have a lot of opportunity to have conflict. I mean, that's just a normal part of relationships and life. And one of the things that we did as a homeschool family that really had a positive impact on our conflict resolution was this idea of parlor time. And we had a room in our house where we called the parlor. And if there was conflict between anybody, whether it was me and a kid or two kids or all the kids and me, we would go into that room and process that. And we would wait there until really we had a healthy resolution. And my grown kids have come back to me and said that time had taught them a lot about conflict resolution that they're using in their friendships and marriages now. So you talk about shared experiences, and lots of times we think about field trips and all the fun things that way, but also the shared experiences of navigating the challenges of life is another rich opportunity you can have when you share homeschooling together.
That is so true. And I would say a lot of that is given by its time, right? Because in
Mhm.
homeschooling, you have a margin of more time. And so maybe in a different setting, maybe when you're not with them, it's harder to have that time to be able to resolve things, right? Or however
Mhm.
long it takes. Or to be able to see the different things that they go through in the day, to
Mhm.
be able to assess their day. And so
Right.
I'll do this with my youngest, and he says, "Well, I want to get on this basketball video game," and I'm like, "Well, did were you able to finish the book that I've asked you to read a few pages out of. And he was like, no, I didn't do that. And so I'm like, well, let's look over what your day did look like. And so we'll go through what he did other than the reading. And I'm like, so at some point during this day, you could have read. And he's like, I could have. And I'm like, and so you decided not to do that. And so in not doing that, you have also made yourself a decision to not be able to play this game because you didn't do, what was asked to do, but you had this whole day to do it. And so, it wasn't any sort of mean thing. But then the next day, he planned his day very differently. He
There you
started out
go.
his day because he was like, I want to play my game. So he started out
Mhm.
his day reading, and he was able to, and by lunch, he was like, hey, mom, I've done this. I've done this. Is there anything else that I need to do in order to get the screen time that I want?
Hmm.
And so I'm able to say, well, did you pick up your room? Did you do these other things I've asked you to do? And then he's like, oh, no, I haven't. I'm going to do it now. And so it's like a building block of, it doesn't all show up all at once, but
Mhm. Right,
it's a
right.
building block of time where they're
Mhm.
learning on a continuum, but the continuum, the time is not compressed and they don't have to learn in this very specific way. They learn in their own time. And
Mhm.
I'm talking about my son, he's 8.
Right,
They
right.
have classes for college kids in college that teach them
Yeah,
this. He's 8, so he's got a
yeah,
little bit of lead time,
yeah,
to get to
sometimes.
that point.
Mhm.
So I think that that's such a homeschooling gift. And this also goes back to family culture. And I know we haven't maybe couched it in that way,
Mhm.
but each homeschooling family, and now I know a lot more homeschooling families than I did. So I've been able to see what their family culture is. And
Mhm.
so, whatever your family culture may be, you'll be able to be more in depth in that. Some families play a lot of board games. Some families do a lot of singing. Some families do poetry recitation. Some families do none of those things. It doesn't matter. Some families cook a lot, right? Like since I cook
Mhm.
a lot, all of my kids are learning how to cook, like
Mhm.
pretty involved things. But some families, it just depends. But being able to breathe into your family culture, I
Mhm.
think is one of the most beautiful gifts because, like you said, this parlor talk has gone not just beyond, your homeschool, but it has permeated your family culture and is
Mhm.
already going into generations,
Mhm.
right? Where
Mhm.
they're bringing that into their life.
Right,
So
right. Yeah,
that's a
and
beautiful
you
thing.
gotta watch that too because you create a culture, if you have 2 crops of kids like we do, we have older kids and younger kids, and you can do so we had a season of life, my first homeschooling part of my career homeschooling was my career. That
Mhm.
was what I poured myself into, and I was able to dedicate a ton of creativity and thought and time and intentionality around it. And that was our culture. But now
Right.
I work full time and I'm trying to homeschool. So there are things that just don't happen in the same way. And I can have my big kids come back and go, hey, wait a minute, what happened to meal mate and zoning the rooms and how is that happening? You're like, it is a different season and it is again a different culture now in
Right.
our homeschool. And I think one of the challenges of being a homeschooler, I mean, this is a challenge of being a human being, but in homeschooling, it's so easy to compare ourselves to the best of what other people have in their homeschooling, or even the best of what we had before. But to allow ourselves to really embrace the richness of that season, we're talking about the richness of homeschooling. You know,
Right.
you mentioned your kids are able to see you be a career person now.
Right.
My first crop of kids didn't see that. So there are trade offs, and I just want to extend grace and encouragement to everybody who's homeschooling to really accept and embrace the uniqueness of your culture and learn from other people's for sure, but just to be careful of that comparison trap that can be
Oh,
that
yeah.
can
Yes.
be
It's taken me years to get over the comparison trap. So,
yeah,
my friends who do homeschool, a lot of them do not work full time or they have like a very, very part time job. So, like you said, your first homeschooling career, you did things very differently because you had a different time constraint.
right,
And
right.
so for me, I've only done this as a working mom, and I
Mhm.
always tend to put the burden of like, oh, we didn't do this or we didn't go there. But you almost have to flip that narrative around and
Yes.
say, my children they have not watched all of them, but they have watched quite a few webinars, or, they've heard me practicing, or, they'll see me talking to my husband, work out sort of some sort of like work problem. Like, what do you think about this? They see a lot of these interactions that I think have no merit, but they're actually learning quite a few different skills, whether it's they see me typing, or if they see me a finished product of what I've written, I'll have them read it, and they'll
Mhm.
be like, "Oh, mom, you wrote this," just for them to understand different parts of what I do, what they may be interested in doing, and then see it realized in a job. And so, um, a friend of mine pointed that out to me, and she said, "Your kids are learning. You cannot stop them from observing and learning from
Mhm.
what you're doing." And from that, they may be assessing, like, "Oh, I want to do what mommy does," or "No, I definitely do not want to do that." You know.
Well, I
So,
love
but
the way
it,
you I'm sorry, go ahead.
oh, no, go ahead. That's all I was saying.
I love the way you said that, flipping the narrative, because that can happen to us as well as we look at our friends with their kids going to school. We can look at what we're offering our kids in a homeschool, and we can either focus on what they're not getting, or we can flip it and focus on what we are able to give. And you talked about the opportunity for your kids to be able to watch you as a career person and learn about those things. And you and I talked earlier about the opportunity homeschooling has given our kids to learn about what kind of career they'd like to have. So our oldest daughter, we always thought she was going to be a vet. She always believed she was going to be a vet. We were all budgeting for her to be a vet. She loved animals, and so much we were all convinced there was no other trajectory for her career life. And then, because of homeschooling, we took advantage of that extra time for her to shadow vet. She volunteered at the Smithsonian Zoo. She had many opportunities to experience what it would be like to be a vet. And she decided, no, that wasn't what she's going to do. So, what is she now? She is a skydiving instructor and air traffic controller. So, I mean, this is
Wow.
a very different career path, but it really was because of the freedom we had as homeschoolers to give her those opportunities that helped her in her adult years. She didn't spend years and years and thousands of dollars figuring it out. She was able to figure that out through her time at home. So that's just one of the rich opportunities you have as you prepare your kids for adulthood through homeschooling.
I love that. That is really, really cool. And here's a few facts. According to Think Impact, it's a free source for education and career related statistics. Um, 67% of the homeschool students successfully graduate from college, and that's compared to, say, 58 to 59 of their non-homeschool counterparts. The pandemic saw over 300 million students all over the world being homeschooled. Um, and so these are just a couple of things that I do want to mention as an encouragement for those who are thinking about homeschool and wondering if that's going to work out educationally. It
Yes.
For sure, according to statistics, they do quite successfully,
Mhm.
and even more specifically in college, because they've had to self-direct and motivate and complete their work on their own for many, many years. So by the time they get to college, they really have a good grasp of how to do that.
Yeah, and even coming back to what we said earlier, when you get to college, now you're responsible for stuff like eating, laundry, keeping your room clean, and those executive functioning skills that we talked about earlier. You can have an opportunity to be better prepared for that as well. And that just leaves you more time for studying and things like that. The other thing is that I was just thinking about this. We often talk about socialization and homeschooling, and many people who aren't homeschoolers wonder if that's a thing, if that's a healthy part of a homeschool. And those of us who homeschool know, yes, it's an amazing part of homeschooling. And that opportunity to have this very diverse experience with socialization as a homeschooler, because you're socializing not just with your own age group in a contained school, but you get to have it with different families, different age groups, different communities. That too prepares you for college to be able to get into that spaces of socializing with people that are very different from you, is a really great way of equipping them to be successful.
It is. It is so funny. When you have this one mindset and you think like, this is what is normal, right?
Right.
And then
Normal.
somebody else points out to you, it's not that normal, Sandra, because like to me, it's like there has to be 30 10-year-olds that were born between these two dates in this
And a
one
lot
class, and then
happened.
they all move up together, and now there's 30 11-year-olds. And
Mhm.
um, it's funny because I'm always like, oh, well, what grade are they in, or like how old are they? Like they have this perfectly aged matchup. And but what's really cool about homeschooling, and one thing that I've seen a lot, is that you can see homeschoolers. Well, there's a couple different differences, but when you see homeschoolers together, you see, 16-year-olds, helping out a 5-year-old, you see 10-year-olds with like 12-year-olds, and you're like, whoa, they're like totally different ages, and it's okay. And
And
I mean, that's like so normal. It's not like you go to the grocery store and every checker is like 18 years old. They're all different ages.
it's very true, and I'm glad you brought that up because we had a really powerful experience with that this weekend. We went camping with a group of families, and as you say, there was this great opportunity for different ages to play and interacting with adults and kids of all ages. But the other thing we had was the opportunity to interact with kids who had special needs, really profound special needs.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And learning to really process that with me as their parent and
Mm.
with their other friends there as they tried to navigate integrating those kids into the games and activities and understanding behaviors, etc. That's another way that we can incorporate that greater opportunity for socialization and maturing and being able to be gracious and accepting with people that are different. So that's another opportunity I didn't have in school because I was with my similar. Didn't have the opportunity to work also with neurodiverse people. We
Mm.
worked with people who were academically or cognitively the same. So another way we can prepare for life and embracing more and more people.
And not just us that's saying that, and we have our children experiencing these things and having more opportunities to experience being with kids of other ages, neurodiverse kids, kids with special needs. Like these are all opportunities that I sort of take for granted now as homeschoolers. It's like,
Mhm.
you see that and you're more integrated. But homeschoolers are in fact more tolerant. And there's a study here
Hmm,
by Albert Cheng, which I will put here in the chat,
hmm.
that says that homeschool students are more tolerant in many different ways, politically, just acceptance wise, all sorts of things, because they have had that time to, um, have those experiences much more naturally than,
Yeah,
these, like targeted experiences, if I can
right.
put them that way. So,
Right, that's a good way to say it. It can be more organic versus targeted, and in that targeted way, you're still kind of putting people in an other kind of group, but if
mhm,
it's organic, that can just be a part of your community, a part of the people that you learn to love and care about and work with, so I do love that. That's a great opportunity we have as homeschoolers.
that's really so that's one thing I wanted to mention. And in that same Think Impact study, boys score 40% better in reading tests when educated at home compared to when educated in public schools. So, people have been doing these sorts of studies over quite a bit of time that homeschooling has been happening in this country. And um, you know, more, I think people think that homeschooling is like this new thing. But if you think back to the very beginning, we were all homeschooled, right? Because there wasn't a school per se to
Mhm.
go to, right? It was the parents educating, it was people reading in their homes, it was a lot more of that sort of education, or, like a tutor coming into your home in your home. So,
Right, right.
it's funny because I'm reading some of the old classics with the kids, and I was like, oh, they were homeschoolers. They didn't call them homeschoolers, but
No,
they were being educated at home. So that's
yeah.
really, in fact, what they were doing.
Well, and we think a lot about the academic options, opportunities when we homeschool, and that definitely is a thing. You can customize so that you can read and do poetry or not, just like you were talking about. But I think some of the things that my kids, now that they're adults, will circle back with are some of the things I didn't even know I was being intentional about. A part of, like, for example, I just love nature. I love gardening. And I've had my daughter call me and say, Mom, I was walking down the path and I was able to identify these trees. And all of a sudden I realized I am so glad I had that as a part of my upbringing. So I only say that not to pat myself on the back for knowing about trees, but to just encourage you as homeschoolers that there are parts of your loves, your passions, your personality that you get to model and embed in the lives of minds of your kids that will be a shared experience, even maybe even a shared love that you can take on throughout life. So these are things you might not even be aware of that you're sharing, but it really is a rich opportunity for creating bonds that last past that homeschooling time. So, we think a lot about academics. That's important. I just want to encourage people that there's so much to just you being you. And that's a beautiful part of sharing life together with your kids.
Absolutely. And I mean, like you said, pouring your passions in, I would say is something I probably did more of in year two, which is, I do really like art. And so I take my kids to the museums a lot. And I don't know, they still don't love it. I would say they
Yeah.
tolerate it more than anything
Yes.
else. But I can't see that not developing into something,
Yeah.
where that could be something. Um, I felt like we weren't really using the piano. I mean, I have a couple that take piano lessons, but we weren't really like using the piano a lot. And so I said, you know what? I would love for you guys to learn some songs that I know. And the kids are totally on board. And so we do like a sing along. My husband is less than enthused and he
Yeah.
finds it, I don't know what he thinks about it, but the kids were all about it. So they like we gather around the piano, like a la Little Women, and we sing songs, and we're having such a good time. But I'm not calling
Mhm.
it like, okay, this is what we're doing in week one,
No.
and making it a lot
Right.
more natural.
Right.
And
Yes.
in that, it just sort of happens. And so
Mhm.
I guess, one piece that I would pass along is that don't make everything so like, this is in the school bucket and it's not fun. Like,
Right.
it
Right.
doesn't have to be like, one thing and then things can just be fun.
Yeah, and you as a homeschool parent can really just have that as your own secret sauce, like your own secret in your mind that covertly you know that all these things you're doing are really having a great learning impact on your kids' lives, but we don't have to call that out because the minute you call it out and go, hey, this is what we're learning, it sort of takes some of that just organic fun nature out of it. Now it's school again. So these are
Right.
things we can keep in the quiet spaces of our minds going, they are learning stuff and they don't even know. Super.
Right. Right. And I mean, I've done this thing. I mean, to me, it's sort of fun because I think it's hard to. Well, for me, so far, it's been difficult to teach them like the value of like this $20 because like to them, it's hard for them to fathom. So we'll go through and I'll say, well, we can buy this mustard and it's 109, or we can buy this other mustard that's 359. And they're like, well, we always buy, this one. And I'm like, well, why don't we try this one and see if it's any different? Because then we end up saving. And then I have Teddy, who's like my little calculator. He's like, we saved $2 and blah, blah, blah cents. And
Everybody needs
so,
a calculator in the family, that's for sure.
right, right. It's nice having a little human calculator.
Yes.
But for them to have these kind of ideas and conversations about, this is something that I did to save money. Or I'll say, like, yes, I would love to go out and eat so that I don't have to cook and we don't have to clean up. But, that's going to cost us about this much money. So instead, I'm going to make this chicken into, something. And then, somebody else will say, like, well, I really want bread to go with that. That's fine. Then you guys can toast that up. And so having this sort of like, let's all be in this together. Um, that back to that family culture thing for them to
Mhm.
understand like, hey, mommy also wants to just order pizza and be done with it, but she's doing this other thing so we can put this into another thing. But just having that continued conversation, I think, is one of the beautiful gifts of homeschooling because
Mhm.
it doesn't stop just because today ended. There's the next day and you can pick that right back up again, or
Right.
they can see at the end of the month like, hey, instead of spending all of this money this way, we decided to do this, so now we can go to, whatever it is that we wanted to do, that everyone said they wanted to do. That could be, going to the fair. For us, Busch Gardens is close by, so, we can do that for the day. But, just having those longer conversations that they can
Mhm.
see it through, but
Mhm.
like, in a month capacity, right? Of
Yeah.
understanding budgeting or money, not in some sort of huge sense, but,
Well,
in that kind of sense.
the great thing too that you're demonstrating, I think, again, is maybe a thing I overlooked and realized as I was in the midst of it, is how much homeschooling allows your children to be a part of that process, the decision
Yes.
making, the trial and error, and the times when they can call out ideas that are better than yours,
Yes.
or call out ways that you're really not being consistent, or that maybe you're not budgeting as well as you could be because you're trying to share that with them. And I think that bringing that humility into your homeschooling, where you're also embracing, with respect of course, but embracing what you can learn from your kids, is also another way you're preparing them for adulthood. You're preparing them to have these back and forth collaborative kind of relationships that you and I know must happen if you're going to be successful in work, or you're going to be successful in a family or a roommate. So enabling them to have that with someone who's an adult is quite an advanced skill, and not necessarily something you would get if you weren't in a family dynamic, because we have a teacher, sort of a sage on a stage kind of approach, versus coming alongside and collaborating with our kids. So I love that you brought that up. It's a really great opportunity we have to help our kids prepare for relationships outside of our home.
Agreed. And to pick up on what you said, the whole modeling, good or
Yeah,
bad, right? Where
yeah,
I'm like,
good or bad. Mhm.
good or bad. So I was like, I want everybody to be reading. I want everybody to be reading all of these things. I
You're
realized,
reading, mommy.
it's like by the time I'm done at like 9 o'clock at night, I don't want to read
Mhm,
anymore. I'm like closing
mhm.
all the things. And so, I'm watching like a news program or not a
Yeah,
news program. And so they're like, "Well, mommy, you're not reading," you know, as
yeah,
Ted astutely likes to point out, "You're not
yes,
doing this." And I'm
yes.
like, "Oh, you're right, I'm not." And so, now they catch me reading. I have books, and then when I sit down, I open up the book and they're like, "Oh, what are you reading?" And the same goes for food. I realized the other day, kids pick up on everything whether you want them to or not, right?
Yes.
So, I
Mhm.
was really hungry. I, like, somehow completely missed dinner, and it was like, I don't know, it was like 8:30 or something, and I was so hungry, but I had just bought one of my favorite meals. I know it's super overdone, but I love, Steve's Killer Bread and avocado, with, like,
Steve's
some
Killer Bread. I've never heard of it.
oh, it is the best. You would love it. You would totally approve. It's like a
Alright, Steve's
16
Killer
grain,
Bread.
and when
Mhm.
you toast it, it's amazing. So I put that and I do some avocado and then I put some tagine on it, and so the
Oh,
girls came down
yum.
and they're like, "Ooh, that smells so good." And so everybody was having avocado toast at 9 PM, and I was like, "It could be worse."
It could be a lot worse. Yes,
Right,
that's
right. But I mean, they see me, or I'll say, I had no idea I was narrating my life in this way, but I'd be like, "See, mommy wants something sweet, so she's having one bite of ice cream. Do you see that? You guys don't need to like put a whole bunch of ice cream in a bowl. You can just take one spoonful in the thing and then put the cap back, and now you've had."
yes. The only thing about narrating your life is you have to watch it, because it will come back to you. "Look,
Oh,
mom, I'm doing such and such. You see how you could do such and such as well?"
oh,
Again, humility. Humility is helpful. Yeah,
yes.
that's
Well,
good.
I totally find that I'm very, very humbled, because I know a whole lot less than I thought I
Mm.
did. Know a whole bunch of things that apparently I know nothing. And they routinely ask me, "Are you sure you went to college? Like, shouldn't you know this?" I'm like,
Hmm.
I forgot. I forgot. College was a long time ago. I'm so sorry. I forgot.
Mhm.
Um, so we talked about life skills, and like hobbies. So I'm able to share the gift of music and cooking with my kids.
Mhm.
What are some hobbies that you were able to like share with your kids, Heather?
Well, I mentioned the gardening, which my
Yes.
daughter really picked up on, but I think also just fitness was a thing that was really important to me,
Mm.
and I've seen and to be honest, during the homeschooling years, none of my 3 big kids really picked up on it. It was something like, "Okay, we're going for a jog, and this is PE today, and you gotta
Oh,
come with me." But now and then 2 of them were into sports, but now they all have taken that on as their own value for themselves. They take their fitness very seriously. In fact, my middle son is really a bodybuilder, which I never was. So I think that hobbies like fitness, like eating healthy, because I am a registered dietitian, also like gardening, like nature and camping. My husband really brought a lot of the great outdoorsy stuff. We traveled because of his courage, not mine. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunity to share those things. And one of the things that I've loved about we have one family in particular that was really intentional about making sure they built hobbies and skills into their family that they knew their kids could carry on into adulthood so they could share those things as adults. Now, some of our budgets don't fit these things, but like, for example, they all ski. And that was intentional because they wanted to be able to have vacations with their kids when their kids were adults and be able to share that. So, maybe I know in your family you play tennis, or those other kinds of things that can be lifelong interests that you can build now to be able to share with your kids later is a great idea.
right. And what's really sweet is that I made it so that all the kids are able to all hit the ball across the net. And so they all will go together. So I'm like,
Mhm.
everyone just go. So they'll all get on their bicycles, put their tennis rackets in their backpack, and then one person will play ball girl or ball boy, and then they'll play. And then, they'll come home and they'll have like different bragging things. Oh, I beat her, or they beat us, or what have you. So,
That's awesome.
and really, at the end of the day, these are all memories, right? Because one
Right.
of the things I say a lot is that most of our like bigger, more fun memories were happening in vacation time, right? Because that's when we could all like
Let's see, yeah.
hug
Mhm.
and unwind, and like that's when we're all connecting.
Right.
And homeschooling obviously is not a vacation at all times, but homeschooling is the opportunity to make sort of like your everyday mundane. You're going to be making a memory on a Tuesday at 1 p.m., right? And you all learned about, for us specifically at lunch today, we're finishing up Johnny Tremaine. John's reading it, and I did not read Johnny Tremaine as a kid, so this is my first time like hearing it. But it was one of my husband's favorite books. So he's got a lovely voice, so we're all sitting there listening to him, and we're all going to have that as a shared memory.
Mhm.
Whether or not we love the book or not, that's not the
Mhm.
point. Is that
No.
we all will remember
Right.
Daddy read this book at lunchtime. It's a privilege to homeschool, and
It
so
is.
um, forget all the stuff about curriculum and trying to pull it all together and having this like perfect little Pinterest perfect homeschool room, which some people do have that, and maybe
Yeah.
that brings joy to that mom or family.
Mhm.
And so it took me a long time, but everyone, you will find, if you want to have that Pinterest perfect room, and that makes you happy and brings you joy, go for it. But maybe it doesn't. For me, I just need to have like a cleaned off dining room table,
Mhm.
and that's all I need, and a comfy chair. So I would say whatever thing that makes you happy or excited, teach that to your children,
Mm.
and that's the thing they're
Yeah.
going to remember, not like something that somebody told you, because you're really teaching your kids to love learning and not to have this like rote memory thing. Minus multiplication, you must learn your multiplication tables.
Well, that's an important life skill. Definitely.
So I think so, because you can't do division without multiplication. I kept trying to say this,
Yes,
but
that is a
like,
thing for sure. If you can love multiplication, hey, that's a great thing. And I like how you're saying just anything that you love,
mhm,
teach that. Because if you love even just one thing and you teach your kids with that passion, they will know in the future what a love of learning looks like. And they will be able to identify that in their own lives and in their own teachers that they may or may not have in the future. And so, even if it isn't multiplication, if it's poetry or if it's identifying trees or whatever it is, teach that because
right,
all of life is learning. I think as homeschoolers, we have the opportunity to expand that definition. It isn't just the curriculum, it is life. Life is learning. So by sharing that love of anything you love and teaching it to your kids, you're imparting some of that lifelong skill of being able just to enjoy life and being a whole person, as we talked about in the beginning, who never stops growing, never stops.
Right, absolutely. And to go back to the whole conflict resolution thing, I think when you have either one child, two, three, or five, um, they have to learn how to get along because you're under one roof and they have to figure that out. So
Mhm.
um, I feel like that is another gift because normally it maybe is moderated by a teacher situation or, that sort of thing. But, you say to them like, hey, this is your playmate. It is raining outside or it's snowing. And so we're not going to our co-op. You guys have to figure out how to make this happen, and 9 out of 10 times they can and they will.
Yeah, and you can teach them communication skills and listening skills and forgiveness skills. And those are opportunities too that are as valuable, if not more valuable, than the academic stuff. And again, we're talking about raising people who can go on into the world and love other people and make a positive difference. So being able to have these relational skills and for us too, to be able to hone our own and really be motivated to go, I do not know how to resolve conflict. I am going to have to go and learn some skills that I can then teach my kids is a wonderful impetus for us to continue growing too and just be more effective as we travel this planet together. So,
Martha said, I'm going to plan fun activities to learn and different things to make it more organic, like these ladies mentioned. Last thing we want is to stress our kids out. And so the first year, that's all I did. I stressed myself out. I stressed my
mhm.
kids out.
Yeah,
I was
we get it.
stressful. And the second year, I was 50%. And so hopefully this year, I can make it less. And so, whatever you may think is fun or whatever you're passionate about, I think is a great place to begin. And then,
Mhm.
and then fill in the rest with the things that, you must do, right? The 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, which is so important to cover. But then, homeschooling, like you said, Heather, is really about learning, right? Teaching your children to love learning. So
Mhm.
however that may be, it could be home management skills, it could be all the different things that are a part of life because
Yeah.
homeschool is life. You don't go to homeschool and then it's like cleaning your room and then doing this other and budgeting. It's all together.
Well, and I would love to talk. I'm looking through put my glasses on so I can finally see the comments here. um, I just see a lot of comments about just being overwhelmed. And you know what? That's such a normal part of figuring out homeschooling. I think sometimes people get overwhelmed in homeschooling and they worry, oh my gosh, maybe homeschooling is not for me. And maybe it's not. I mean, it's not for everybody, but being overwhelmed is a normal part of figuring the whole thing out. So if it's, and there it is, there's another opportunity for you to model for your kids what it's like to work through overwhelm. Because that's a part of life. Everybody goes through stress and anxiety and seasons of life that are just flat out overwhelming. And
Agreed.
so, learning how to navigate that and having your kids come alongside you is a rich opportunity. It's not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're adjusting to this new wilderness of homeschooling and you're, cutting down the trees and building your cabin and gathering water. And someday soon you'll have a little cabin in that homeschooling wilderness and it'll be yours. So, just I wanted to encourage people to be easy, gracious with themselves, recognizing that that's just a part of how everybody rolls into this.
It is. And, to talk about social media a little bit, it's very easy to look at people's social media and think, wow, that homeschool is perfect. And that homeschool is perfect. And back in the day, you didn't have to like look at everybody's perfect homeschool room and perfect homeschool, whatever. But just remember that social media is everyone's highlight reel. They're not showing you the difficult days. They're not showing you, all the stress and struggle. So I look at that as I look at that as something that's encouraging. So I look at something and I think, oh my goodness, that is so cool. I love that idea. maybe I can incorporate it. Or you see something that you've done that somebody else is doing and you can feel encouraged by that. But I encourage everyone to think about social media as a very 1% thing, and what you're doing every day as the building upon foundation thing. And so, it's nice to see things and be appreciative, or, see things that you've done and feel encouraged in that way. But if you're looking at social media and it's getting you down, then maybe you should
Take
not
a
look
break.
too much at it.
That's what you tell your kids. Take a
Yeah.
break.
Well, thank you so much, Heather. You always give such beautiful and truthful insight into homeschooling, and just have been such an encouragement to me over the years. So I thank you for that. And for those of you watching in this audience, and you're thinking about homeschooling, there is no right and perfect time to start. You can just decide to start and then follow your homeschool state law. We obviously have a ton of next steps and resources. Our website is a great place to start. You can just go to hslda.org/get started. In addition to our website resources, I also want to let you know that HSLDA members have access to a great legal team and educational consultants to help you answer questions you may have about very specific things, your child, your teaching and learning style, their learning styles, how to manage multiple kids, how to manage your homeschool. We're here to help you do that. We have educational consultants who specialize in helping member parents who have questions about homeschooling. You might have a child with learning differences who have dealt with bullying or other things in a traditional school. Our educational consultants are also homeschool moms, and so they have quite a bit of experience, and they specialize in really pre-K all the way through high school. And so they're ready to help you tackle all of your challenges, whether it's finding a math curriculum for your child, making a 4-year plan, doing a transcript, or putting your portfolio together. So if that's something that you are thinking about, please consider joining. We're at hslda.org/join. And I thank you so much. Thanks again, Heather. And we will see you next week. Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Today's program is made possible by Mom Possible. Step into this engaging, interactive space for practical support from moms who are right there with you in the day-to-day of homeschooling. You can browse our library of tips and resources, see how other parents are answering common questions about homeschooling, or join our mentoring group for deeper community support. Get started at mompossible.org. That's mompossible.org. Thanks for listening to this episode of Homeschool Talks. If you've enjoyed this conversation, will you do us a favor by sharing it with a friend or leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts? As a reminder, you can find show notes for this episode along with our other Homeschool Talks conversations at hslda.org/podcast. And if you want to be the first to know about new episodes, as well as upcoming guests and topics, you can sign up for our email list using the link in the show notes. That's all for now. We hope you enjoyed this program, and we'll see you next time.